Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Outsider, a great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, Holly's trying to make her way back to town. And obviously everyone's getting a little anxious because it's like, all right, like, so what's Holly going to reveal to us? Like what she's been investigating. And obviously she's still in the process of figuring everything out because she sees on the, like she realizes like, oh, what went down? She hears about the guy last episode who got killed by the cops. His name is Terrence. And so we find out that him, because she actually got Andy to run some stuff, which I'm like, I'm loving that's becoming more and more of a thing because he's like, I'm finding myself thinking about you all day. And she's like, thank you. I guess she's never really had maybe a lot of relationships just because of who she is and just the way her mind works and everything. Probably not the easiest thing to have a relationship. So her whole thing with Andy's actually kind of, I don't know, I'm surprised it kind of turns into that whole situation. But I thought that was kind of neat. But the fact is, Andy lets her know that Terrence and Heath were cousins, but then it turns out his fingerprints were all over, like, what was it, like the car, or at least the girl's fingerprints were all over the car or whatever, because it turns out he actually dated the older half sister of the two girls that were killed. But it's like, it seems like he had nothing to do with the murders, but it turns out he was working with Heath to do it, or what he believed to be Heath to do it. And it's like, but why would he do that? And then like obviously Holly later on is like, maybe she's starting to believe maybe he didn't have a like I said, I'm getting way ahead of myself because there's so much to go down. There's the whole situation with Ralph. He's looking at the photos, and then Jeannie sees that, like the pictures that both she drew and the kid who stole the van. And whoa. She's like, what is this? It's like the kid who, she's like, wait, so he saw the same thing I saw. It's like the kid, Ralph is trying to explain it because, he's just like, you were dreaming. How can we believe this kid? I'm like, I get it. Maybe it's just because me, I'm like, I don't know whether I believe in the supernatural or not. I'm open to the thought of like, hey, maybe it does exist, but I'm not going to be completely blinded by the fact that, scientifically I get it. You have your own defense mechanisms of why you want, but it's like, Ralph, come on, dude. I brought this up last time. It can't be a coincidence. It literally can't be that some kid who stole some van literally drew the same thing that your wife drew from a dream. Literally the exact same photo. Like it just like, once again, it's like you're like, no, there's no rational way to it. Like it's just it's like, come on. Your wife never saw that photo until then. She drew hers after, and she's like, what the hell? These are the same. And it's like, oh my God. So there's that whole situation. And obviously Ralph is kind of dealing with that. He ends up going to therapy. He ends up talking about what he saw. He ended up seeing his son. He's like, oh, so maybe it's progress because, my son, telling me I need to let him go because I'm put too much connection to this whole Frankie thing, which we're going to circle back to that soon enough. But the fact of the matter is, it's like he's getting, it's like, that was his interpretation of that situation. So he's like, oh, it's a breakthrough. So, and I love that they set it up. They make it such a small little thing, but that's so pivotal right there. So we'll kind of, switch gears with that. And obviously, Jeannie goes over and she gets all these pictures, like she sketches out what, Jessa said. Obviously, Glory was happy. She's like, oh, you brought these toys over. The girls were kind of, obviously, Jessa in particular is kind of turned inwards about the whole situation. One of her the girls refers to Terry as daddy. Never referred to it because they thought it was too babyish, but now they've gone back to daddy, so that speaks volumes. But then, Jeannie had her, like, describe the picture. She drew the creature and El Cuco. And obviously Glory was like, I hope you're happy. I hope it was all worth it putting my children through this again, so on and so forth. But we see what it is later on. She drew it. It's like, dude, she literally takes what the kid drew and she took what she drew. I mean, she saw the kid who stole the van, put his picture first. At the very end was her picture. And then in the middle was what Jessa saw. And so the time came. Everyone's gathered. Holly's dropping the bomb. Because, lo and behold, it's like, oh, who picked her up? Jack. And at first I was like, it was interesting because I was like, oh, Jack, all the marks on the back. Like, he still had the rash, but the bumps and stuff were gone. I was like, I guess it's kind of a bit of a reward because he was like, thank you. I guess it's because he's such a good little boy in the sense that like, oh, you're kind of a good dog servicing me. So it's kind of like, all right, you got rewarded. I'm gonna pull back a little bit on your pain and suffering just because you've been cooperating, and doing what I've asked you to. So he goes, because obviously he's gotten in the middle of this investigation. I was wondering how that was going to play out. Ralph sent him to pick up Holiday. I was like, He can't and he won't do something. I'm about to say, like, not let you'd have to, if he did something to Holly now, he'd have to kind of explain it. But literally while I was in the bathroom, he saw a message that stopped her. I was like, did it walk in and write that? We'll get to that soon enough. But, he drops Holly off and everything. And like I said, the time comes, she explains everything. And when you look at the grand scheme of everything, I know it sounds crazy because of what she's saying with the supernatural element, but it's like, come on, dude. You got to admit there's a certain pattern to this. Ranging from Terry to Heath to Maria. And I love that they make a point of, like, because she's like, rather than going through this whole situation of going after who scratched Maria or whoever got to Maria at first, it's like, no, we go after who we think is the next victim in this whole situation. And she thinks it's Claude. I think last episode I called him Clyde. I don't remember. But, she's got this figured out. It's like, we already know who the next person this thing is going to, like, pretend to be. Because, and I brought this up last episode too. It's like, it seemed like I brought up a Jeepers Creepers reference in the sense that it's like, oh, every 23 years for 23 days, it gets to eat. So that's why I was thinking, like, maybe it takes like every 23 days for it to kind of get its thing going. So, but we'll get to that soon enough as well. Obviously, Gloria's like, no, go on. I was like, oh, this isn't going to end well. And then she immediately blows up at Holly, being like, oh, you think this is going to help my husband? This doesn't exonerate him in any way. This is what you've been working on the entire time. It's like, it sucks. Because, like, we know that Holly's 100% right. But you can tell the entire time Ralph was sitting there. He's like, But if you notice it, certain people are like, oh, no, man, this, especially Eunice. Eunice is like, oh, I've heard about El Cuco. Like, he grew up knowing that. Like, oh, yeah, the child eater and everything. So him... the investigator, Homedue was starting to believe that shit too. Like, so there was some skeptics. I mean, I think when you actually break that room down, 50-50. 50 were starting to believe Holly. The other 50 were like, she's nuts. She's out of her damn mind. That actually ended up being a lot higher percentage than I thought. That's not me including Jack. It was literally 50-50 if you don't include Jack, because obviously he's there for his own reasons. But even Jack was kind of like, nah, I believe because I know what's going on here. But that's, oh, come on, dude. But it was like because hence why Holly didn't call, because she knew what was going to go down, but she still had to present it anyway, because she ends up bringing this up later on. It's like she had to speak the truth. Like, regardless of whether you believe her or not, she feels that she was obligated to tell the truth. I mean, she literally brought all the facts of what she found, And then, like, there's that whole thing. She was on the bus where Terrence came to her and it was like, look, it looks like there was a bus, a truck or something in the road. She was like, stop. And it was like, it wasn't there. I was like, what the hell was that? Like, did she see the future or something? I didn't get what that meant. Oh, boy. Oh, my God. So we're in there when we really kind of break this whole thing down. Okay, so she goes over to Ginny and Ralph's place because Ralph is talking mad shit because I guess he didn't recognize that Holly gotten in the car. It's like, no wonder, like, this whole clown of a performance, no wonder she didn't want to. And she's like, Ralph, cut it out. She's staying with her. She's like, I could stay in a motel. He's like, I know, I wouldn't hear of him. Get back to Ralph's place, and then you have Holly be like, why didn't you bring those pictures? And it's like, yeah, Jeannie was like, I was thinking about it, but like, this is, and then she presents, and Holly's like, that's what this is about. Why the 24 to 27 days? Because it takes that long for it to shed its skin to get the new skin. I was like, that's what it was about. I was like, that's so interesting. Because of what Jessa said, it's not an immediate, like, ooh, shedding. It takes a while. It's not like, oh, I scrape the skin off immediately. It's actually a slower process. And so in between transformations, and this is something Holly brings up later on, it's vulnerable. And so it brings up the whole thing about like, oh, wait, you saw the creature here. And it's like, yeah. Ben being reluctant, doesn't believe all this. And she's like, Holly's like, did you dust for Prince? And he's like, long short, story short, he's like, no. And she's like, okay, I'm a dust for Prince. So she ends up hooking up her, putting like tape of marker on it to kind of basically represent like a UV light. Runs it through and we see the substance on the chair and everything. And it's like, what? I was like, oh, it's like, and then even Ralph was leaning and he was like, wait, is that the same substance we found on those clothes at the barn? I'm like, oh, dude, now Ralph is starting to feel it too. He's like, yo, and I love Holly being like, oh yeah, you said that there was no indentations on the carpet, meaning that it wasn't like anyone sat there, but obviously there was residue there. So I was like, what's that about? Then we start tripping it out, like being like, oh, it's a psychic thing that this thing can psychically get you. I'm like, oh my God, the pieces start falling into place about everything. So what Holly saw was, and she says it later on, it tried to stop her from getting back here. It was messing with her head. This thing is and it was something I was wondering about too, like, because it seemed like it has like some kind of psychic hold on people, because like Jack ends up like, like there was nothing or no one there at the time, but he was like, in pain, like something was happening. I was like, what the hell is that about? And then, like, when he was in the woods by himself, it looked like he was getting attacked or at least, like, dropped down. I thought, like, this thing had, like, telekinesis. No, it's telepathic. It can get inside of your head and make you see shit. So, hence what Holly saw. Also, what Jeannie saw. But that's also interesting because it also shows you the level of this thing's telepathy that it gets inside your head, because it still left enough of a residue behind, even though it wasn't real. Because it was not real enough to leave an indentation that it sat down in a chair in a carpet. From the chair, it didn't leave any marks from that, but it left enough of residue still. And I'm like, dude. And then it's not until Ralph went into the damn room, I was like, oh, I lost my mind. I was like, of course. And that was something I had brought up last episode. I was like, is that really his son being like, oh, you have to let me go? Or is it a creature pretending to be his son? But like, I didn't know about the psychic thing. I was like, did it thing just like pretend to be his son? But it's like, how did they get his DNA? It doesn't need his damn DNA. All it needs to do is get inside of your head and it can project whatever it wants. I'm like, yo, dude, this is getting next level. I mean, this thing is borderline Pennywise to a certain extent. I mean, granted, it can shapeshift like Pennywise, but also like using your like fears against you. But obviously it works differently than Pennywise, but there's parallels between this and Pennywise. I think that's so interesting. Obviously, Pennywise is like, I haven't seen part 2, and it's been a long time since I saw the original. But Pennywise was like because I think the thing was, I think the whole thing was like he was an alien. But I think I'm from hearing from someone who read the books, I think it's more so like, no, he's a demon from a different dimension. Because I know some of Stephen King's books obviously take place within the same universe. It's a whole thing. But nevertheless, this thing is kind of a demon in the same regard as well. So it's a whole thing. But it's like, oh my God. And it's what I kind of thought, but I was wrong, because I was like, how did it didn't need Derek's DNA. And Derek represented what I thought it did. It was meant to be a means of getting him to let go of the investigation, because what did he say in that therapy session, bringing it back? It was, I gotta let him go. I'm treating Frankie like Derek. Or even the same thing with Ollie, because Ollie, the kid he shot, Frankie's brother, would have been the same age if they were both alive. And I'm like, that's the point. It literally took the one person that would get you to back away from this investigation, because going to Jeannie wasn't enough. Using Derek was supposed to be the tipping point, and it was working and the whole point was stop Holly. That's another thing why I was able to write that message. And then we also saw it written on his hands. I was like, what the? Because it's in his head, and it just was able to write those. I'm like, oh my God, this is so freaking good. And then also later on, when he's getting his ass kicked, I'm assuming by his mom, maybe that's supposed to be kind of representative. Like, that's kind of something he fears, because maybe his mom was abusive in some shape or form. But he's getting his ass kicked. But as we can see, it's not really there. So that's the thing of like, obviously this thing can interact, like when it's psychically in your head, it can interact with the real world to a certain extent. So was it, and it like, that's the thing, is it like psychically beating the crap out of you? Or is it because your brain is so powerful? Like, the fact of the matter is, it can like psychic self out. Like, if your brain thinks it's feeling something, your body will feel it. Hence, I mean, that's how the body works anyway. Like, you're able to feel pain because your brain is telling the rest of the nerves in your body, this hurts. It gives it a specific reaction. So if this thing's in your head telling your brain you're getting punched, you're going to start, like, your brain, like, manifests that. So I'm wondering, can this thing inside your head actually physically affect you in that way? Or is it just because it's psychically doing that your body's just kind of reacting with it because you believe it to be real, your body believes it to be real? I think psychically it was legitimately kicking his ass because there was blood everywhere. But like I said, that could just be the trick of the camera in the sense of not sure. But I think it is more so like it's psychically kick. It was like she was messing him up, tossing him around and everything. But now, like when Jack got beat up earlier, like when he was in the woods, now we understand what was happening. We never got to see it. And even why, like, it was able to kind of give him the mark, and it wasn't even it was nearby, but he was invisible at the time. Why I was like, cause when Jack kind of kneels down from the pain when he first gets to Mark, it's like, ow. It was like, we didn't see anyone else there, because it was at that moment, like, I guess the moment it saw Jack, it like psychically connected, it ended up bouncing, but then ended up doing that. It's like, also it shows you this damn thing doesn't even need to be near you. Like, it must have like crossed paths with Holly at some point in time. The fact is she wasn't even near it, and it was like this thing was able to broadcast its signal that far. I think that speaks volumes. So obviously Holly's bringing this all up to, Ralph, because Ralph is trying to be logical about the whole situation. But it's like, well, the fact of the matter is for Holly, it's like, dude, do you think I enjoy being humiliated? I said what I needed to say, whether or not people were going. She went into that room knowing no one was going to believe her. She literally said that to Jack. It's like, oh, I can give you a sneak preview. No one's going to believe me, and she was 100% right. So, and even like the investigator for the lawyer dude was kind of like, hey, like the fact is I'm starting to kind of believe, like the fact of the matter is throughout history we thought like, okay, when people brought up something like demons and witches and stuff like that, it's just because they were ignorant, so they didn't know, like, you know, kind of like this was something human. There was no science to kind of explain things. Obviously Ralph was trying to look for a scientific explanation, but he was thinking like, what if we gotten so used to trying to justify that demons were actually humans, that maybe there was just something we didn't understand. What if this one time we've been mistaking a demon for a human? Then there was the whole reference of like the Yiddish vampire, because he's thinking that, like the lawyer dude thinking that this is all BS, but it's like, dude. And even Eunice is taking this so seriously, because he was the one that's like, you know, he's trying to work around it. Like, he's not trying to go full blown, like, I 100% believe Holly, but he's like, maybe we should give her the benefit of the doubt. He's like I said, his mind's open enough. And obviously we get that line from the trailer. It's like, yeah, you go ahead and do that. I'm going to do that, you know, crazy shit, you know, just doing regular cop work and trying to do real stuff. Like, so that whole situation from the trailer. But it's like, oh my God. And also there's a situation of, because I was wondering about that whole thing with like, I wonder, does it affect the person? Because it seems like Claude seems like he's been off recently. And obviously there was that moment he ended up getting slashed in a bar. He ends up getting cut and he's bleeding and stuff like that. So he ends up leaving. But it's like, it seems like it does do something to you in a sense of like, it's almost like when this thing does infect you, it's taking your DNA, but it seems like it infects you, and Claude just seems off. So that begs the question, was Terry off in any shape or form? While it's in a process of metamorphosing into you, like, does that do something to the original person? It makes you wonder, is there kind of like some supernatural connection there? But the fact is, Eunice is keeping an eye out, showing you that he is like deep into this stuff. So that's really interesting. Obviously, Glory's handling this her particular way, where it's a situation of, because of all of this, she's taking out Terry's clothes and stuff like that. She even calls Ralph over, because there's a part of her that's like, yeah, like, she's like, we shouldn't have to go through this much to try and prove Terry didn't kill those kids. And now that kid, Frankie, and now she's like, maybe we should think about the fact is, you know, did Terry do it? And she covers him out, because she's like, all this time she's been praising with like, Terry's innocent, but now it's like, the fact is we have to go to, in her mind, Loco Town just to prove that, you know, Terry is innocent, that we're going to such extreme, like, out there theories that she's like, maybe it's BS, maybe Terry. But it's like, but even Ralph is like, but the fact of the matter is there's contradicting evidence. She's like, tell me straight up, do you know if Terry did it? And she's like, I don't know. The evidence doesn't say it, but honestly, in my gut, I don't think Terry killed Frankie. But the fact is, Glory, it's hitting her, because it's like, there's still the fact is she even thought that made her go like, wait, what? Like, she couldn't believe it, that, you know, now she's starting to doubt Terry herself. Literally everyone doubted him, but she was always the steadfast believer, like, no, Terry didn't do this. She goes upstairs, all the clothes of Terry, because she needed to get rid of Terry's stuff, because she thinks like, no, I've defended him, he's a terrible person. I don't think she was 100% sure what she was going to do. I was thinking she was almost going to burn the clothes in the house. But her daughter's there folding the clothes back up, because no matter what, it's like, that's still her dad and everything. And now, like, it puts Glory in this complicated position of like, how can I explain this to my daughters? Because in my daughter's eyes, he's still that person. I kind of still looked at Terry as like that person, but now I'm thinking he's a killer, and that's so sad. But the point is, it's feeding into that what the creature wants. It wants to break them. It wants to break all three of them. So all that fear, that suffering, like, it's so delicious, you know? So that's a whole thing in itself. So, and obviously, as we can see too, like, the fact is for Jack, all the bumps on his neck are back and they're bigger. So it's kind of like, I think it's more of like a psychic push of being like, bend to my will. It's almost like he's burning the back of your neck, because it's almost like it has its hand on the back of your neck at all times, and it's like, you're not doing what I'm saying, it burns you. Because that's kind of what happens with a burns, like, you know, especially like you burn yourself on something, it blisters up like that. So demon and everything, which I immediately think demons and hellfire, so I kind of think, you know, maybe that's kind of what it's a psychic reaction, it's a physical reaction to a psychic burning, branding, I guess, is a more way to look at it. But it was also the thing of like, well, why did Terrence do all that he did? Why did he help out, with the whole Heath thing? Because he didn't have much of a choice. What did he say? He said that thing fucked over Terrence and me because it made him part of this whole thing, and it basically ruined Terrence. I mean, it ruined Heath, made him, once again, like it did in every situation. So. And that was also something I was wondering too. I was like, did this thing have a partner in everything? And it's like, no, it seems like only in specific cases does it have a partner when it ultimately needs it. I'm wondering why. What, I guess because of the connection, it needed Terrence, because it made it easier, because it's like, oh, you get Terrence on your side. You already chose to look like Heath, but by getting Terrence involved and making him your slave, those girls would go with him because he dated their older half sister. So it gave you more leeway. So it does whatever it needs to make it more convenient to kind of get what it needs. But also, once again, it is that thing of like, it also, in some cases, it needs the extra help when it's transitioning from itself to another person to back to itself to the next person. Because once again, there's that 20-day period of that metamorphosis and everything. And I'm like, I love that being a little bit of like lore for how this thing operates. That's like I brought up like the whole, like I said, it's like the Jeepers Creepers thing, but obviously modified specifically to how this thing operates. So I always like that, like, certain things like have like a rule or way they'd have to go about. And even Holly's like, the reason why this thing is trying to stop us right now is because it's vulnerable. It would only do what it's doing right now if it wasn't scared that we're on to stopping it, because it's not powerful in this state. While it's in a position of transitioning, it's vulnerable and it needs to protect itself. Hence why it had Jack like put all that up, because it's literally trying to build a little nest for itself to kind of like nuzzle in and like, oh, I need all this stuff. Like, is it just to kind of keep itself preoccupied? Or like I said, just kind of like it's supposed to be like a guard wall while it's resting. Hence why like it's eating all that stuff, like, the deer and the boar. It's because it needs substance. For the fact is, while it's in this weakened state, so I think it's eating other things to kind of fill itself up. It's kind of like appetizers for the kids that are the full-blown meal, and then like everyone else is suffering as the dessert. I think that's how this whole situation is rolling out. It is so fascinating how this whole situation is breaking down. And obviously Jack, because it was also something that he had brought up, Holly had brought up about like, did you ever find out about why that cop didn't show up? It's like, yeah, Tamika's dealing with her baby. It's like, no, there's more to it. She had a nightmare. She saw something. You hear it hit Tamika up and be like, yeah, Jack's something not right about Jack. Jack seems a little off. The fact of the matter is, because let's not forget, Holly did print off a picture of the back of Terrence's neck. And it'd be interesting if Ben had, I said Ben, I meant Ralph. I'm calling him Ben because obviously that's the actor, Ben Mendelsohn. But what if he has it and then she's like, whoa, that's the same thing Jack has. What? Start PCs. I don't know, dude. I don't know. That could be the lane they're going down, but Tamika will probably bring up the fact is, that's why I'm thinking like they're setting this up to be like her child might be the next target. I mean, that's what Jack was worried about in the first place, but I'm thinking especially that might have been a psychic calling sign. Because like, why keep her away? That's what I'm curious about. Because I guess it's trying to keep her on edge so that when the time comes, like it can just snatch up her baby whenever, like. Or maybe it's trying to, well, because the fact is she was, that could be the other thing. Much like trying to get Ralph off the investigation by using Derek, it pretending like, oh, here's someone's taking your child. Because what was Tamika doing? She was all up in Jack's business because she cares about Jack. So that's what I'm thinking. That's what I was like, oh, dude, I don't know, man. I don't know. That's what I'm kind of thinking. But the fact of the matter is but the fact is that, like I said, Ralph is slowly being like, he wants to keep it rational, but there's a part of him that starts, because he walks into Derek's room, he's like, was that you? And then he brings it up to Holly of like, it's like, what did he say to you? It wasn't him. What did he say to you? Told me to let him go. And then Holly was like, okay, did you tell your wife? He's like, no. And it's like, okay. And he's thinking to himself, and he says it out loud. He's like, it wasn't him. And it's like, Ralph is starting to believe, whether he hasn't fully gotten there yet, but it's there enough that obviously it's like they're running the DNA and stuff from the substance off the chair and everything, but it's getting there, dude. And obviously Holly leaves with Jack because Jack's like, oh no, we got to go check this whole situation out, and she goes with them. She sees the makeup he's got wearing on his face and stuff like it. It's like, yeah, we're gonna go out to the bar. And she's like, okay. She drops the stuff she was gonna wipe his face off with, or give him to wipe his face off. He bends down. She sees the bump. She's like, oh, She's like, yeah, oh no, there was stuff back at Ralph's place. I need to go. And he's like, no. We might as well just kind of go there. And I'm like, she recognizes what's going on here. She realizes he's being controlled by the creature. Hell of a way to end off this episode. Dude, I am so freaking excited for the next episode. Things are heating up and it's going to be so good as this whole thing like slowly unveils itself to be, what it is. And especially with Holly being in danger like this, she's got to play it cool, but it's like obviously Jack is meant to handle this himself because we saw him lock and loading his gun. So because that was even an interesting thing Holly brought up. She's like, why did it go out? I mean, it eventually went after him too, but what did it do first? It went to Jeannie because I guess it thought Jeannie would be the easier person to kind of break. And if Jeannie broke and was kind of like dropped the investigation, he thought, okay, maybe Ralph would stop too, but it didn't stop Ralph. So he used Derek. He needed that. It was meant to be Jeannie was supposed to be the first line of defense. Oh, that didn't stop you. All right, Derek's the second line of defense. So, and once again, this thing could get inside your heads and make you see shit. It's like, dude, there's going to be more coming with that, I'm sure. And I'm so interested. Dude, I'm so interested where all this is going to end up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.